Okay, if you look at the terrain, if you click on the terrain settings, you see a whole bunch of things related to the tree and detail objects. We are going to look at this a bit later on, but you can see that there's something called the tree distance, and this is at which distance the tree actually appears. And so even if you scroll the imaginary camera out really far out, you can still see the tree somewhere on the terrain. Okay. Excuse me. But to actually maximize the efficiency of the rendering engine, we can actually change the tree distance so that after only a short distance, all the trees will disappear from the terrain the moment I start panning my camera away from the terrain. So if I now go to the inspector view and I change the tree distance, for example, down to 95 or to maybe to 177, for example. So right now you can see all the trees. Now when I start panning the camera out, you see some of the trees will start disappearing. Can you see the trees are now disappearing? And the further I go, all the trees will disappear from the terrain. Okay, so this is a way of saving effort on the rendering engine and making the rendering more efficient. To say that we only let the trees be seen at a certain point when the imaginary camera is close enough to the terrain to actually see the trees. So as we move in the camera, again you can see the trees appearing. So by default, the tree distance is set to be pretty high, so we set it to be pretty high for the time being. Okay. The billboard start, again, we're going to talk briefly about billboard start. So when I put the billboard start to be a very low number, for example 0, you see that really close up, the trees don't really look so good. Okay, see the moment you see right now, you see when I pan in, right, the trees look normal, but the moment I pan out a bit, the trees all look like fuzzy. Okay, now this tree now is currently called it's not rendered properly, it's rendered in a billboard form. Okay, so what I'm saying, the billboard starts at position of 5. At position of 5, it already turns into a billboard. If I change the billboard component to be higher, the billboard start component to be higher, in the inspector view window, set it at 344. So at 344 only will the tree become a billboard. So now you see it's still normal. The tree still looks normal. It looks as with its proper detail. Okay, all the trees still look normal even when I'm panning out. Okay, if I put the billboard again to be slightly lower, you can see all the trees are turning into billboards. So as you move this billboard thing in and out, you can see for a particular distance, the trees will turn into billboard. A billboard is basically like a flat thing that actually has no dimension. So if I were to spin around, if I hold the alternate key and I have to spin around, so right now if I spin around, you see that it all looks exactly the same. It doesn't have any dimension to it. Okay, the billboard looks exactly, it's like what it says, it's like a billboard. Even if I swing around, the billboard looks exactly the same no matter how I swing around it. Okay, whereas a three-dimensional tree will change. So if I pull the billboard start out now, so all the trees look normal now, then when I rotate the camera around, it looks like a normal tree. You can see like as though it's a proper three-dimensional object that's been moved around. So when I pan the camera around, I can still see all these trees properly. And the whole idea of having a billboard is to, as I said just now, to maximize the efficiency of rendering of the rendering engine of the particular game engine. So billboards are a special type of visual component. We say gives the effect of a 3D model without actually having to go through all the work of rendering a 3D model, and it's actually a flat image that's always facing the camera. Okay, like when you travel on a highway, you see a large advertisement board, a billboard, it's always flat and it's always looking at you. Okay, and the common uses of billboards is to model grass details, particles, and on-screen effects when you do not need a high level of detail. When you put in a lot of vegetation, when you put in a lot of trees into the scene, like what we saw just now in the terrain, the rendering engine will have to work harder in order to render all these objects in 3D. So if you want high performance in your game engine, you need to keep the amount of vegetation low, keep the amount of grass low, keep the amount of trees low. Okay, this is one point to keep in mind if you are designing a 3D game. Okay, first person perspective game. Okay, so we have already seen some of the terrain settings, particularly to the detail distance, the tree distance, the billboard start, the fade length, and so on. You can play around with some of these to see what the effects are on your terrain. Okay, so let's look at some of the various environment effects that you can introduce into your terrain. So the first one is a skybox. So let's look at the skybox. The skybox is a large box that encloses the world of the scene view, and it's a cube consisting of 6 flat sides with inward-facing textures to make it look round and infinite. So the best way of a skybox is to think of it like you're putting a terrain into this large thing that encloses it, like the sky. For example, if you are on the face of the earth, then the sky box is the sky is as though it's a large box that's enclosing everybody who is living on the face of the earth. So we think of the terrain as like a smaller piece of the earth, then the sky box is like the smaller piece of the sky that you can see when you look up from the terrain. Okay. And you can have many different skyboxes or no skyboxes on different cameras. Now, recall that we talked earlier in a different lab. We said that at the very main minimum, you have at the very basic minimum, you have one main camera in your game view, and whatever is seen through the fulcrum of the main camera will appear in your game view. Okay. So by default, you always have one main camera, and you can also have more cameras if you want. You also have your imaginary camera, which you're using when you're panning around in the scene view. Okay, so you can add the skybox to the different cameras so that the world looks in a different way to different viewers. So for one particular viewer who's seeing the world through a particular camera, you can have a skybox so that the world looks very sunny. You can, for another viewer who's looking into the world with the terrain using a different camera, you can put in a skybox so that the world looks very rainy. It looks very cloudy. Okay. So if you want the world to look uniform to everyone in the scene the world looks exactly the same. Okay, then you add the skybox to the scene. Okay, so let's look at skyboxes in Unity now. Let's pan out a bit now. I'm gonna kind of rotate this back around a bit so we see the scene again. Now I'm going to import a skybox package. So I'm going to go Assets, Import Package, and I'm going to choose Skyboxes. Again, the importing package dialog box comes up. I'm going to choose Import. Okay, imports a whole bunch of stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now in your Assets main folder in your project view, you should see now a additional subfolder called Skyboxes within the standard Assets subfolder. And you can see textures, and you can see a whole bunch of textures that represent what is this? Represent a skybox. So you have dawn, dusk. Okay, if I pull this out, you can see this more clearly. Okay, so you can have dawn, dusk. You can see the preview down here. This is how it looks like. Dawn, dusk front, dawn, dusk left, dawn, dusk right, dawn, dusk up. Okay, moonshine, overcast one. Okay, so these are all different effects of a sky. So let's choose sunny one, or sunny 2. Okay, let's choose sunny 2. So let's choose sunny 2. We can see various areas of sunny 2 left, sunny 2 right, sunny 2 up. So these are various parts of the skybox that you're going to see depending on the camera as you pan around. Okay, now as I said, you can add the skybox to the camera, or you can add the skybox to the scene. So now we're going to add a skybox to the camera. Now remember, we have a main camera in the scene, in the hierarchy view, which is the camera through which the game view is currently appearing. So if you look down at the game view below, where the main camera is, if I double click on the main camera, okay, you can see this is where the main camera is located at. And it's actually located some distance away from the terrain. Okay, so the main camera is surveying the terrain now. Okay, and we're going to add this skybox to the main camera. Okay. So what we do is we select the main camera in the hierarchy view, then we click on component in the main menu, then we click on rendering, and then we click on skybox. Okay, so now in your inspector view pane, you should see a skybox component that's been added right at the bottom. Okay, and now you want to add a particular skybox. Click on the small circle to the right of the text box that says none material. You click on that, and you have a whole bunch of materials that you can add to it. So we're going to choose a material that represents a sky. So we're going to choose one that says sunny 2 sky. Let's say that's sunny 1 sky. Okay, I think I like sunny 2 sky better. So let's choose sunny 2 sky, and you double click that, and you can see now your game view has actually changed. You can actually see this sunny game sky thing imposed on top of it. Okay. Right now, let's move the camera so that it actually shows the terrain better. Right now, it's not showing the terrain very well. Let's move into the camera. I'm going to move the camera around a bit. So, okay, we move the camera here. Let's move the camera up. We'll move the camera up a bit. Move the camera up. Move it up some more. It's not really looking. Camera further up, maybe move it to okay, let's move the camera a bit to the right or left, up. I'm just playing around with moving the camera at the moment. I just want to move the camera so that it actually can render the terrain properly. So okay, it's a bit too low now, the camera, so let's go into the camera again, main camera. Let's drag the camera up, up. Drag the camera up some more. Drag the camera up some more. Drag the camera up some more. Okay. Then maybe we want to drag the camera to the right a bit so we can see more properly. We drag the camera down a bit. Drag to the right some more. Okay. So now we can see there's a sky box through which the camera is viewing the terrain. Let's turn this around. Let me switch back to this. So now you can see I'm panning the imaginary camera. So this is my original main camera, and the camera is actually looking down onto the terrain. Okay, and this is how it looks like. Okay, I'm gonna turn on the rendering so that the ambient light is proper. It's white. Currently the ambient light is black. So I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to click on Edit. I'm going to click on Render Settings. Okay, then you can see here the Inspector View window shows the render settings. Now click on Ambient Light and change it to white. Okay, so now that it's white, the ambient light is white, you can actually see the scene more properly. You can close that. Okay, so now you can see the camera that's showing the scene. So my camera is here. My main camera is here, is actually going down onto the terrain, and this is the scene that's seen through the main camera is what's shown in the game view. I can maximize this by clicking on the play button now. Okay, so this is the main view now. Okay, looking down from the main camera onto the terrain that I've just created with the skybox as a addition as an environmental effect. Okay, now let's continue. Let's add some fog to the scene now. Okay, so to add the fog, you want to make the scene look more surreal. You want to have like kind of fogging setting. Let's go back to Edit Render Settings and you click on Fog now. Okay, now when you click on Fog, again you can see panning here. We can see now that there's kind of a special effect. Now it looks like as though there's fog covering the land in the imaginary camera through the scene view. And if you click the play button to see the game view in full-blown mode, you can also see that there's sort of like a kind of a fog, like a occlusion onto the land. Okay, it gives a foggy effect. Okay, and you can play around the values of fog to see how it changes. So if you like gray, this is the color gray. If you like really weird looking fog colors like pink, for example, you can put that. You like blue kind of fog, okay, you can put that as well. So let's go to more normal grayish colors for fog. Okay, the fog mode can be exponential too, can be linear, it can be exponential, too. This affects the fog density. So when you put it as linear, the fog density, you can put it to be quite high and it doesn't actually get so foggy. 0.5 for example, no problem. 0.76 also no problem. But if you put it at exponential, then pretty much everything gets enveloped in fog. So with exponential, the fog density multiplies quickly to actually make the whole place blanked out. So if you put exponential, your fog density has to be pretty small, 0.05 for example, already looks terribly foggy. If I put 0.01, okay, it's not too foggy, so 0.005, okay, for example. And if you have a linear fog, then you have to say where the fog starts. So if you have a linear fog, and I set the fog density at 0.6, I can say the fog start is maybe at 50. If I put at 50, okay, then it doesn't, you can see further away it doesn't become foggy so fast. Okay, if I put it at 1, and where the fog ends, if the fog ends at 20, small value, then immediately everything changes. Otherwise, if you put at a higher value, 500, you can put it at a small intermediate value, 100 or 150 or 75. Okay, so this again controls how the fog is distributed across the terrain that you are working with. So you can play around with these fog settings if you want, and see what the effects are in your scene view as well as in your game view. Okay, let's look at lens flares. Lens flares are a kind of effect that happens whenever you point a camera at a bright light source. For example, if you take the camera and point it up at the sun, there will be a distortion of the image appearing in the camera. Okay, this distortion is called a visual deformity, and it's usually the result of light bouncing around inside the glass of a lens. So sometimes you want to add this kind of effect to the environment to make it more realistic. So for example, if you have a character, you're walking around in the environment and you look up at the sun should kind of look like it kind of has a special effect. Like it looks like if you point, if like let's say you're down on the ground, you look up through a camera, the sun kind of creates this visual, okay, as we say, a visual deformity in the camera. It doesn't look like a sun, but it looks like it's like a halo of light that's kind of circulating or moving around. Okay, the best way is to actually see it when it appears in Unity. So sometimes you want to create this special effect, and you will do this using what's called a lens flares. And what you do is you create a light source. In Unity, there are many different light sources available to simulate, for example, the sun, or to simulate a lamp, or to simulate some kind of light source in the environment. And when you add a lens flare to a light source, it makes it more realistic and makes it more brighter. So let's see how we can add a lens flare. First, let's turn off the fog first. I don't want the fog. Okay. So let's add a lens flare. Before I add a lens flare, let's add a directional camera to the scene. So I'm going to click on Create, and I'm going to click Directional Light. So now I have got light in the scene now. And this light is currently actually positioned just above the island. You can see the light, directional light. Okay, actually it's quite far away from the island. Let me just pan around and see where exactly is the location of this thing. It's actually quite far away from the island. Sorry, from the terrain. Let me just pan around. Okay, so if I'm panning around correctly, it's just that I'm gonna drag this directional light, so it's actually directly above the terrain that I've just textured. So I'm gonna go back to directional light. I'm going to click on the transform here. Okay, I am going to drag it. Let me just flip it here first. Okay, I'm going to drag it on the x-axis a bit. I'm going to drag it out on the y-axis a bit. Further in on the x-axis. Okay, now see how it's looking like. Alternate key. Okay, it's not too bad. It's almost there. Let me drag it further in on the x-axis. Again, I'm going to highlight the directional light. On x-axis, I'm going to kind of drag it in. Let's select it. Okay, let me click this. So it's on x-axis. I'm gonna drag it here. I'll drag it in some more. Sorry, directional light. I'm gonna select here, drag it in a bit some more. Okay, so now let's see where the directional light is from my main view. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it's still not really above. Let me try and drag it some more further. I'm just gonna drag it on the, okay, so I'm gonna drag it on the on the z-x axis maybe. Okay, be a bit here, a bit in here. Let me rotate the camera again to see that I've got it correct or not. Okay, gonna rotate it back. Okay, so I think now the directional light source is pretty good. So it's looking like a sun now. It's shining down onto the texture, into the terrain that I created. Okay, then what I do is I go to Assets, Import Package, and then I click on Light Flares. If you can see here, again, if importing package comes up, click on Import. And I should have light flares. You should see a subfolder called light flares now. Okay. Again, I click on the directional light item in the hierarchy view, and then I go over to the inspector view, and you can see something here called flare. An item called flare. Currently, the text box says none flare. Click on the rightmost circle there, and then it says different types of flare. So let's choose sun to give the effect of a sun if you are having a camera that's looking up directly into the sun. So click that and you have the sun now added in. We're going to see this later on afterwards when we move the character controller through the environment. So we leave it there first at the moment. Okay. Now let's go back to the environment, the terrain that we created, and let's create a lake, create some water. So let's move back down. I'm going to move back down into the environment. Okay, I'm going to move down again into the environment. Okay, I'm moving down quite slowly at the moment. Okay. Okay, let's move in a bit. Okay, so let's say I'm now above here, I'm above this. Okay, I'm going to make a small lake here. Okay, I'm going to make a small lake here. Now to make the lake, the way that Unity models water is as a flat plane, like a flat plane of glass. And this flat plane of glass, you're going to put it on top of a indentation in the ground that represents the bottom of a lake or the bottom of a hole. Okay, and you're going to use the pane of glass like a covering on top of that hole. Okay, so that's how the modeling is done. So let's go back to the sculpting thing and let's create a small hole here. I'm going to create a small hole. Okay, I'm going to press the shift key and I'm going to actually create a small hole here. Okay, as you can see, I've created a small hole. Okay, and now I'm actually going to place, let me move into the scene so it looks better. I'm now actually going to place, let me drag this out a bit so it's more clearer. I'm now actually going to place the water, okay, as a glass, like a pane, like a flat plane on top of this hole in the ground that I've sculpted. Okay, so you can think of it like I'm pouring water into this hole here that I've just sculpted. Okay, so again, I go to Assets, Import Package, and choose Water. For the basic version, you have a certain type of water. For the professional version, you have another type of water. So the Water for the basic free version of Unity is quite basic as the name implies, so it doesn't look really realistic. If you have the professional version, it will look more realistic. Okay, again, importing package, import, compile scripts. Okay, so now we've got water basic there. I'm going to take daylight simple. I'm going to drag it over here and put it into the scene view. So now, you see, now it goes nicely into here. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's pan out a bit. Okay, so now it's laid on like a kind of like a flat plane on top of the hole. I'm going to scale it so that it fits nicely into the hole. I'm going to scale it now. So I'm going to scale it. Okay, it's a bit there. Scale it down a bit. Okay, maybe down a bit here. Scale it out a bit. Okay, maybe I'm going to move it down a bit as well into the hole. Okay, so it's down a bit into the hole. I'm going to scale it again a bit. Move it down a bit into the, move it up a bit. Scale it a bit again so it looks more realistic. Okay, so this is basically the pool of water that we have here. That's how it's modeled in Unity. Okay, now we have created a basic environment. We want to see how we can move through this environment. Okay, so we have just talked about water. Water is an effect that looks like a flat plane. It looks like the top surface area of a pond or lake. Now later on you will see that as I navigate through the environment, when I walk on top of a plane that represents water, I will actually fall through that into the hole that the pane of water is actually covering. Okay, we'll see this effect later on. So let's go to character controllers. The character controllers is to allow you to navigate through the scene that you have just created, the terrain and the texturing you put on terrain and the environment, to navigate through that as though you are in a first-person perspective. So if you have played a first-person shoot them up, okay, you basically take the role of someone who's running through the scene and you can see the scene around you in 3 dimensions. We are going to simulate that so that you can kind of walk through the scene you've created and see how it looks like. And to do that, we're going to create a character controller. The character controller and the main camera both have an audio listener component. So the idea of an audio listener component is it represents the ears on the camera or the audio component on the camera. And in a 3D environment, unlike a 2D environment, the sound that comes from a particular sound source will either be very strong or will be very soft depending on your distance in 3 dimensions from that particular source of sound. Later on, we'll talk about sources of sounds, okay? Right now, what we want to note is that every camera basically has as though a microphone or audio listener component plugged into it. Now, the character controller, when you create it, is basically like you're creating another smaller camera in the environment that is distinct from the original main camera. Okay, and the idea is that this camera is mounted onto the shoulder or onto the character controller object, so that when you move the character controller object through the environment, the camera also moves with it so that you get a first-person perspective. Okay, so if you have a character controller object in the scene plus a main camera, then you will both of these both the main camera as well as the camera that's associated with the character controller will have an audio listener component, which will be very confusing for the 3D Unity platform. So we actually have to decide to remove one of the listener components from one of the cameras. So let's talk about introducing a character controller back into the scene. Now let's talk about introducing a character. I'm going to just pan out a bit here. I'm going to put a character controller into the scene. So again, I'm going to say assets, import package, character controller, import. Okay, and now you have, as you can see, a character controller. Okay, so what we want is a first-person character controller. That means you are as though you are looking through that particular view of the camera as you move around. So first-person character controller is done like this. You locate the first-person character controller, you drag it onto the scene view here. Okay, now the important thing now is currently you have to make sure that I'm going to drag it out. You have to make sure that it's appearing above. It's going to look like a capsule. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. Currently on the ground. Let me zoom in a bit more. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Okay, so if you look carefully now at the first person controller that I've just dragged in from the assets, it looks like a cylinder, and there's a camera fixed to it. So this camera is the one that's providing the first person perspective now. And you must make sure you drag this entire cylinder above, so the entire cylinder appears above the ground level of the terrain. Otherwise, the cylinder will basically fall through. Okay, we'll see this happening later on. Okay, so right now, you actually now have a camera that's actually seeing the terrain that is displayed in the scene view through the viewpoint of this camera. So that's what this is, the active camera now. So if we click on play now, okay, we are now as though in a 3D environment. So if I move my mouse now, okay, it's as though I'm looking around the environment. I move my mouse. Now if I move my mouse up, can you see now the sun? The sun that just now, so this is called the lens flare effect. Just now I introduced a sun into the environment, and we saw that we added the sun special flares effect. So this is how it looks like. It's as though it's simulating as though you have a camera, you're pointing at the sun. Okay, so now I can navigate about in my environment. I use the keys to move. I use the spacebar to jump. There's a jumping effect. Okay. So you can see I'm navigating. I can look around if I want. Okay. Now if I navigate closer to water, now you see I actually didn't do the water properly. So you can see that water is like a piece of glass that's been placed or layered across the hole. So if I come to this part where it looks like the water, if I just continue walking, I'll fall through into the hole. Okay. And then hopefully I can actually come out from the hole again. Let me go here. We turn around, see whether I can run out. You can see now, looking up, I actually don't see the pane of glass that is the water. If I run here, hopefully I can jump up, jump, come on, jump. No, I'm stuck up. Okay, I managed to jump out. So now I jump out. You can see if I turn around, basically you can still see the glass water, the pane of water there. So it's like it's not really properly covering the thing now. So what I can do now is, since I'm in front of here, I can go out here. So now that I know it's not covering properly, I can actually adjust it to make it look that it's covering properly. This is the part that's not covering properly, right? So I can select the daylight simple water. Again, oops, fallen out there. Okay, so I can select the daylight simple water, select it, and then let me just pan in here. Okay, so now I want to scale it. I want to scale it a bit more to the right. Okay, so it's larger, it covers, then scale it up more. Okay, so now it looks better. Now it's actually covering the entire, I think it's covering the entire hole properly. Okay, so now we have done that. We can go back to the play view, and then we can just look around and see whether the water now looks normal. Go forward again. Yeah, so now the water looks normal. You can't see it covering a hole. But if I walk on the surface of the water, it looks fine until I reach the hole. Then I fall through into the hole. So again, you want to make sure that the edge of the water aligns with the hole as well. Now I can run through the scene. Now see what happens if I run out over the edge of the terrain. So now I fall down. I keep running. And because this thing has a gravity component attached to it, if I run over the edge of the terrain, I'll fall into space. So let's see let's see how this happens. I run here and I fall out. Okay, so you can see now I'm falling down. I'm falling down out of the terrain. I'm falling down into empty space. Okay, so to summarize, we have talked about creating terrain and textures, creating trees and grass, adding environmental effects into our terrain, such as a skybox, fog, lens, flares, and water. And finally, we look at creating a character controller to allow us to navigate through the terrain that we just created, so that we can continue to mold or sculpt the terrain to make it look more realistic. Okay, and that brings us to the end of our lab.